Greetings from Ann Arbor, Michigan, a great state and a great place of the great USA. Welcome to our podcast series, and I am promising you that this series is going to be very enlightening, very inspirational, a lot of fun, and something that will really, I think, help you as you walk your path to holiness. This series is going to have a lot of different things that you probably have questions about, but maybe had the opportunity to ask, especially about religious life. Like, what do they do all day? Who are they? Where do they come from? What's it like when a young woman enters religious life? So stay tuned as we will discuss where sisters come from today. Welcome back to our Go LE Digital podcast series, The Truth Will Set You Free. I am Sister Joseph Andrew Bogdanowitz, and today it is my great pleasure to introduce another one of my beautiful sisters, Sister Mary Canisius Willie. So, Sister, now that you are joining us and the many, many people who will be watching this as time goes on, tell us a little bit about your background and how you were raised in your family.
So I'm the youngest of four, and we grew up Catholic, and we also grew up moving around a little bit. So I got a little bit of a taste of what different people were like and how the faith was lived in different places, including Germany when I was really little.
And how long were you in Germany?
Just 2.5 years, and I was really little at the time, but I owe a lot to my older siblings and my parents for filling in those memories for me. But
you just have to answer this. Did you speak English or German when you were there? Because you were so young.
Well, the funny thing is that they told me that I could very fluently handle the bakery because I would go to my mom to the bakery, and she, wanted something as close to American bread as she could find, and so she had to give specific instructions. And because I went with her, I learned it so well that when my aunt came to take care of us and my parents were back in the States house hunting, then I was able to say, what kind of bread we needed sliced. And
so your priorities for the German language were in the right place.
Yes. Absolutely. So, but spent most of my life in the Midwest, and really just loved it. Loved, there's just really virtuous people there. I had a lot of great examples to grow up around. And so when it came time for me to go to college, luckily I'd gotten involved in a really great high school youth group, which, what was really beautiful about it, too, is that it wasn't just introducing me to the devotional aspect of faith. It was introducing me to the intellectual aspect of faith as well.
Now, where were you? You mentioned the Midwest, but where in the Midwest were you?
So in high school, I was in St. Louis.
Oh.
So most of my life I've bounced back and forth between St. Louis and various small parts of Iowa.
Okay. Was this a Catholic high school, a public high school?
It was not. It's funny. I remember my mom asking me one day, do you want to go to a Catholic high school? And I didn't know what that meant. I thought that would be an all-girls school, and I was not interested in that.
Didn't want all girls.
No. I was getting interested in boys, and just like, no. I need balance in my life, like the boys need to be there.
Okay, very good.
I thought that's what that meant, but now that
that's beautiful. Let me just point out to our audience that we really do want young women to enter our community who are very balanced. And so to have liked guys and to still continue to like them, even though that is not your vocation to marry any one of them, is a beautiful balance, since we, again, work with so many children and their parents all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, sister.
Absolutely. So during high school, I was discerning where to go to college, and I really wanted God to be part of that decision.
Wow. Were you raised in a strongly religious Catholic family?
No, not really. Okay. We definitely practiced. We did everything that the church asked us, and I remember my mom taking me to Stations of the Cross when I was little, and that was something that really was a spark, even though at the time I kind of went reluctantly. Like, what are we doing? Okay. But by the time I got into high school, like, give me the entire Triduum. I love this.
Wow.
So I really wanted God to be part of the decision. And as soon as I walked on the campus of University of Northern Iowa, again, another public school, but I knew that this was it. And it had a beautiful Catholic student center, and I practically lived there. When I wasn't in my dorm or in class, I was probably over there, and just made wonderful friends.
I was going to ask you about your friendships in a Catholic environment in a state university. Mm-hmm. How did that work into your life?
It was beautiful to be part of a community that was a little bit smaller, and you felt you had so much in common. And we still were very much our own individual people. We were all different majors, all of it. Most of us didn't have class with each other, but we still felt like we had a home with each other. And a lot of beautiful things were happening. Some of my friends who knew a little bit more than I do were saying, like, hey, can we fix some of these liturgical abuses that are happening? Or can we have more Eucharistic adoration? Or can we start a rosary group? So a lot of that was happening, and vocations were a result of that. There were
I was going to say, Sister, you have mentioned something that's very common for our vocations, no matter how the young woman, well, to a certain extent, is raised. I mean, hopefully there's always going to be a strong religious influence there. And, of course, it's nice if it's Catholic. But when they get into college, I have found that to be so common that an excellent Catholic, either Newman Center or St. Thomas Center or whatever they may choose, that particular, university might choose to name the Catholic presence on campus. So many young people, I believe, in college are looking for God.
Yes.
And I think that's an essential part of college today. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I could say what's, obviously besides education and growing up experiences, but still, there are experiences across the board if we're not careful. So what keeps us balanced for the good, the true, the beautiful, the virtuous life, we have to rely on so many wonderful priests and wonderful lay people who run these institutions and draw in, as you mentioned, your friends with yourself.
Yes, and I think one of the beautiful things, too, is just the availability, the flexibility of, like, whenever college students are around, we'll pretty much have our doors open. And there were so many times after class, especially if I had a hard day, all I had to do was walk across the street and just park myself in front of the Blessed Sacrament and spend time with him.
Beautiful. And you found yourself doing this.
I did, yes.
That's beautiful.
I was just like, I need Jesus right now, through just the normal ups and downs of life. It just somehow that became a draw for me, and I would typically go by myself. And
wow, sister, that's grace for sure.
Yes.
Was it run by diocesan priest?
It was. Okay. Yeah, there was a wonderful diocesan priest in charge at the time, and he was just he was the first priest I told about my discernment, and he was very insightful. He's like, okay, I can tell you're excited and you're scared for your life.
That's a beautiful balance.
Yes.
Reality. Good. You were serious about this.
Yes.
What degree were you pursuing, and what degree did you obtain?
So at the undergraduate level, I obtained a bachelor's in German and history, and ended up with a minor in creative writing, of all things.
Oh, my
I had the most random degree.
German,
but it was
history,
fun.
and creative writing.
Yes.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so then what happened?
So then towards the end of my college experience, I had to more or less admit to myself that I was discerning as opposed to deciding to discern. Like, really, it happened so naturally.
It's beautiful.
That this is something that I really needed to consider. And just the draw of the Lord. Again, I think as part of just parking myself in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I was there, he was there, and he says, do you want to do this for, ever? Like, yeah, I kind of do. And then, however, I had only barely begun visiting religious orders, and I was like, okay, that's beautiful, but that's beautiful, but and so I didn't really find anything that clicked yet. And so I did what a lot of people do at the end of college, and they don't know what to do. They go to grad school.
You're right. She is so right on that one. Okay.
Yes. So then I went back to St. Louis, where my parents were still living, and I went to St. Louis University.
Excellent.
To pursue a degree in history, in early modern history.
And who runs St. Louis University?
Down there, I met Father David McConey, SJ, who is just wonderful, a wonderful friend, wonderful spiritual director. And he ran a group called Campion Society, which I heard about even before I started going. This is actually how I met him for the first time. It was totally God's providence through not just a friend, but a friend of a friend who said, you've got to do this. Mm-hmm. So before I was even officially going to SLU, I went to the first meeting and I was hooked. Because again, there's that intellectual life, completely wedded to the life of faith.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And
is that Dominican, by the way?
Yes, it is.
Even though you were in a Jesuit university?
It's the contemplation, giving to others the fruits of the contemplation. That's something that's been deep in my heart for a long time. And, finally was searching for a home for that. And I found it here. But the second Campion meeting I ever went to, you were there with 3 postulants.
And the postulants, again, for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so postulants are in their first year of formation. They do not wear the habit yet. They wear blue, but at that time, they're fully living the life of the community and asking whether this is the place where God wants them.
Right.
Yes. So
then what happened when we arrived on the scene?
Well, the funny thing is that God was preparing all of this because there weren't very many people who knew I was discerning, but one dear friend of mine who had known for a long time, she had kind of slid very slyly this direct mailing envelope from the Dominican Sisters of Mary Mother of the Eucharist. She said, I think you need... Actually, I didn't think she knew I was discerning at the time, and I got mad at her kids who told her. I was like, you weren't supposed to tell
your
mom.
So we're dealing with a married woman.
A married woman who was kind of could see the spark of vocation, was like, you should see this.
Beautiful. Okay, audience. Okay. Planting the seeds in these young people. Okay.
Yes. And then in fact, my best friend who had entered the Jesuits also started hearing through the grapevine about our community, and he said, you need to check them out. And so I'd already been on the website. And
you had?
I had, and I'd been looking around, especially at the schedule, because people had been telling me, okay, there are contemplative orders and there are active orders. And in my mind, I built up this image of it's either or, which isn't entirely true, but this is what I was told in my ignorance at the time. I was just like, okay, I have to be either or, but I just couldn't choose, and it's like, I loved the contemplative life, but I loved being able to do something for God's people. It's just like, I don't know about this, but so I was just like, can I have both? And then I'm looking at the schedule of the Dominicans and just first thing, holy hour, contemplation, mass. And then after a quick breakfast, you go out into the apostolate. And it's like, oh my goodness, they do have both. It's a full monastic life with a deep, deep spirituality, but then it goes out and serves the people. And so that was one of the things that began to click. And then, God dropped you all into my backyard pretty literally. It's just like, okay, I can take a hint. I'm going to meet them.
Did you come up and speak to us?
I remember speaking a lot to the postulants at the time. Because
you did, not to me.
Not to you. I'm just I was like, that would be too real. Too real to talk to the one in the habit. I'm going to talk to the ones who aren't in the habit yet. Those 3 postulants who are now fully professed sisters are, we're still very close. So
that is beautiful.
Yes, and they could tell right away. They're all introducing themselves. Hi, I'm Sister So-and-so. I'm Sister So-and-so. And I say, I'm sister. And then I'm like, but I'm sorry, I'm not a sister. And they start laughing. And I'm like, oh, no.
We're already making the connection.
Yes. I mean, there really was a connection.
Yes.
There was a sense of kinship that was there that I didn't have even when visiting these other really beautiful religious orders.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what degree did you obtain from SLU?
So at SLU, I completed a master's in history, focusing on medieval and early modern history. And the department there was just beautiful. There were a lot of faith-filled people there that was really supportive.
Wonderful.
It wasn't, a competitive against each other type of atmosphere that can be sometimes there in grad schools. It was very supportive, and even those who weren't Catholic were very excited about my vocation. It's because they studied medieval history just and I was about to go live a medieval life. That was exciting to them.
And that really was your strength. I remember you loved everything that was medieval.
Oh, yes.
You still do.
Oh, I still do.
But if it's art, if it's literature, if it's music, if it's medieval, it's got you all over it. I remember that. And I'm like, there we were praying in the 13th century. So I think the Dominicans are quite medieval too, even though we're 800 years later. thriving. But sister, tell us about your first vocation discernment retreat, because I remember it very well.
Oh my goodness. So I also remember being terrified because I knew at that point, okay, if I'm going to go on a discernment retreat, if I'm going to go to Michigan, now I have to tell my parents. It just seems...
reality's getting close.
Yeah, reality's getting close. So I went the November after they met the sisters, and it was a very beautiful experience because normally my natural instinct is to be pretty shy and kind of wait to be approached, to be spoken to, which is something I'm always working on. But I just felt so comfortable in this environment. There's all these other young women who are looking for the same thing I'm looking for. They're looking for the vocation in life. And there was this comfort level there of, okay, we're all here for the same reason. And that immediately put me at ease. And then just everything I was finding out about the Dominican life, I was just like, both contemplation and action. Yes, check. Rich intellectual life. I love studying. I love, that's part of how I grow closer to God is through study. And, ever since I was 16 and I first read my Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, I was just it's just like, oh my goodness. So like the faith life and the intellectual life really do go together, faith and reason. So like notice that, and, they teach, and I did already wanted to teach. And so everything was just kind of coming together.
And how did you get there?
I went there. Well, actually, I went on 2 retreats. So one of them, it was not even a friend of a friend. If it was a friend of a friend of a friend who was also going.
God uses everybody.
God uses everything.
To it.
God uses everything. But the second time, I went with Father McConey and a whole bunch of girls from SLU, which was a really fun experience. We just had a big van and went through the snow.
Yes, I remember that.
It was one of those big snows.
And that's a pretty good hike from St. Louis to Michigan.
It is. It's about 9 hours.
It is, yeah.
But both times
so it was heroic to take a van full of
excited young women. Yes.
They're considering they were all hyper about their vocation.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's beautiful. That shows you what priests can do. And many of our vocations, I would say the vast majority, come through some holy priest who gets it, wants more blessings for himself and for his sheep and lambs and everybody else, and brings them self-sacrificially. I think that's a heroic thing for a priest to do. But we're blessed with knowing some of these very heroic, including certainly Father McConey.
Absolutely.
Then, did we have a one-on-one?
Yes, we did. We did both in November and in February. So by February, I was pretty sure it was just, determining when, and that's a difficult decision. And now that, I've lived religious life for so long, I, definitely see the wisdom of just really snatching at the chance to just go. But in my particular case, God really wanted me to finish that master's degree. And I see that now, like just entering with the people that I entered with being able to already have the master's degree to like go ahead and start teaching after making my first vows, which was a huge grace for me. And just, you give your life to the Lord, and the Lord says, okay, go on your first mission and go teach.
But sister, one other thing too, because a good friend of yours was also a good friend of mine, a Jesuit scholastic.
Yes.
Today, Father Jacob Boddicker. And so I would get him to go ask you what you were really thinking and to kind of prod you towards action.
Like, is she doing okay?
Because
is she freaking out again?
Really loves the waiters. Like,
that's true.
That's kind of free bait for screw tape for the devil. C.S. Lewis's name for the devil.
Yeah, I had plenty of people around me to keep me on the straight and narrow.
But he did a beautiful job as well. I really, I can't extol the beauty, of course, of the priesthood enough, especially those who love Mary. They're going to get women's religious life. They're going to see an image in us of the Blessed Mother, of that spiritual motherhood, just as we see in them the priesthood. In the priesthood, we see the alter Christus, that he is another Christ on earth today. And so it's that complementarity that St. John Paul the Great always spoke of, that it's so important. And if you are wondering what retreats we are referring to in Sister's vocation story, we're referring to the vocation discernment retreats that take place 3 times a year. There's a previous episode, Sister, on The Truth Will Set You Free, just on the retreats. So all these young women can come and find God's will. Don't say, let me just take a guess. We're talking about your eternal soul and everybody that you are supposed to influence in life to come closer to God. You don't just take a guess at your eternal salvation, you see. So, Sister, bravo, even though you knew, which is very natural with a bit of hesitancy, I'm really moving closer to this. And that's good because that purifies your motives. That makes sure that you are prudently weighing things, so to speak, another option, another vocation, etc. Continued education, although you're getting that too, which we'll mention in a minute. But it weighs all the possible because there's so many options today.
There are. And actually, one thing you were mentioning, just the beauty of the vocation retreats. Yes. Like one thing that I found really refreshing, especially with having visited a couple of other religious orders. One was very much, I met with the vocation director and she was just like, oh, you walked in the door, you must be interested, like kind of the like trying to suck me in. And so I was very cautious of that. It was so refreshing to come to our discernment retreat and just like, all that everyone cares about here is finding God's will.
Exactly.
I'm just like, praise God.
Exactly. And God has the perfect timing. And we can't rush it, and we don't want to be slow. We want to be
exactly with his time.
He's the one asking you to be a spouse, not us. Okay, sister, so you graduated with what degree again from SLU?
So a Master of Arts in History.
Wow. Yeah. Like I said, that medieval is deep in you.
Yes, it is.
And then you became a postulant and a novice. And how did you get your religious name?
So it's interesting. That also related back to the intellectual life. Back when I was in college, I had a wonderful mentor professor who mentioned a thesis topic to me. Just like, okay, you're going to do an honors thesis. No one's written about this guy, St. Peter Canisius, in a really long time. And it's true. When I started researching, it was just, it was difficult to find some things on him. But what started out as a research project turned out to a beautiful spiritual friendship.
Oh, how beautiful.
I'm reading about his life, and yeah, you can say the bare details of he's one of the early Jesuits. He traveled everywhere. He founded schools. He worked hard to like keep people Catholic in a time when like everything was just kind of falling apart. And there's that aspect of it, which is heroic and beautiful. And he wrote a catechism and all of that. Yes. But when you read his letters, it's just beautiful. Like he, on the one hand, if you see his picture, he looks like this very stern Dutchman, which he is. But he really had this beautiful heart for spiritual friendship.
Oh, how beautiful.
And, for a man who only had one home visit ever and spent most of his time away, even from the Jesuits that he was closest to.
Wow.
He just wrote about how, we're united together because we're living a life for God. And because of that, we're going to enjoy, that happy place where death is dead, heaven. We're going to enjoy that together.
Where death is dead, that is in heaven.
Yes.
How beautiful.
I read that.
Poetic.
He is poetic. He is.
And you write a lot of poetry too.
I do.
So I can see that strong connection.
That's where the creative writing comes in. Yes.
That's beautiful, sister. Then after you entered the convent, what education have you received through the Dominican, such as a Mary Mother of the Eucharist?
Oh, so much. First of all, even in the novitiate, we were privileged to take classes, and it's beautiful because there's very little pressure. We take very few. The tests that we take are very important, but that's not in every class. For the most part, we just get to sit back and absorb, which is wonderful. I just love classes on scripture, on various spiritual topics. Dominican spirituality and history, it's wonderful. So we get this really strong foundation, and I got to start teaching after vows, which is an education in and of itself.
Yes.
But the beautiful thing is I can ask any of my sisters who are also teachers for advice. So I learned a lot from them.
And where did you teach? That's interesting too.
So I taught at Peoria Notre Dame High School.
And who went there?
So it's where now almost blessed Fulton Sheen went.
Exactly.
Which is really exciting.
That is beautiful. That was a great gift.
It's beautiful to be part of that heritage. I love him. And then after that, I had the great privilege to go to the Catholic University of America to continue formal education, and got a Master's of Education there.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good education. You have been to a lot of places, and you've used your opportunities well.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
It's a huge gift.
Are your parents proud of you now?
Oh, yes.
Didn't they just celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary?
They did. It was beautiful. So all 14 of us in my family got to come together.
That is so special.
Which, it was wonderful.
And I think that's a beautiful thing too, sister, for the listeners and those watching this to remember, in the Truth Will Set You Free audience that you are, that the family is always a part of who we are. Mm-hmm. And one thing I remember being very struck with when I entered the Dominicans, obviously, was how much we pray for our families.
Yes.
And I'm like, I thought I prayed a good amount for them before, but we have to, and we don't miss those prayers. Mm-hmm. And it is scheduled out in a beautiful, you use the term, in a beautiful way of freedom, whereby I can do so much praying. As you mentioned, we're contemplative first,
yes,
and then we're apostolic. So we bring Christ who fills us out into the world. Mm-hmm. And it just the beauty of that, and to help set people free through His truth, through His veritas, which is why, again, the Dominicans value education so highly. Mm-hmm. So, Sister, I really do thank you.
Sister, thank you for having me.
God is so good. So, in the middle of the Jesuit universities, here are our vocations also. And we just really, through your beautiful witness, I just really want to thank the priests who help young women find God's will for them, whether it's marriage, consecrated virginity, religious life, and which community. I mean, Father actually got in the car with all those Gabby girls, came 9 hours, was a part of it, heard confessions, helped give the retreat, probably was the main one giving the retreat, actually, with the sisters. Got back in the car and went back 9 hours and then went to his classes on Monday morning.
Yeah, and kept on teaching.
God blesses that gift of self. It's always that gift of self. And I know that when Father came to your final vows just 1 year ago, he said, I have to get a picture with her because God used me to help her find him in this vocation.
And it's funny, actually, my final vows, camera. It was on his birthday, too.
Yes, it was on his birthday. Oh, isn't that amazing? The Feast of St. James.
And it was the feast day of my other Jesuit friend who helped me out of
That's
vocation.
Right. Oh, my goodness.
Everything came together.
Gracious, sister. How God has the plan if we just go along with it.
Yes.
So, Sister, thank you so very much.
Sister, thank you.
Your witness is beautiful. You just always glow. It's always that constant smile. I speak to her personally in English, though if you started into the German, she could run ahead of you. But we'll keep it on an English basis. And Sister, thank you for coming today. And thank you, audience, for plugging into this. And again, in particular to the families, how important it is that your witness to your faith and your love of God and to the love of your own marriage is essential, as well as the love of you and your spouse for the priesthood and for religious life. That frees the child. That's exactly how I knew my vocation. I had the freedom to look at all the beautiful things and say, which one is God's will for me? And Sister, that's exactly what you did. And so we're so grateful to God. So thank you so very much. Tune again to The Truth Will Set You Free. God bless.
So if you like the material on this particular podcast, then please click on the next podcast for another fascinating story.